The No One Left Behind Team Half Marathon. This is my second marathon I've done in the last month, Marissa. And when you have someone beside you, it makes it so much nicer to finish.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like to go out and run by myself and whatnot. But man, when times get hard and you're at mile 11, 12, it's nice to have a team behind you. Yeah. And so the No One Left Behind was kind of designed with that in mind. It's you start together, you finish together, you stay within 10 to 15 feet together the entire time, and no one gets left behind. And you know, if this is your first time attempt to take on a challenge like this, 13.1 miles, it's awesome to have a support team that's got your back because they're not going to let you fail.
That's the whole point of doing it together is to do one of the, you know, this is a great time if you have never done a half marathon to grab your friends and do it. Teams of 3, it's only $40 per person. It's June 15th. It's the perfect time of the year. It's
beautiful course.
It's not too hot. There's usually not threat here in Utah of rain and snow. So it's a great day. And start at 7 a.m., Spanish Fork, Utah, closed, path almost the entire way.
There's only one section that's very lightly traveled, and we have people there stationed. But other than that, it is 100% on trail next to this river. It's gorgeous. I mean, talk about your Instagram backdrop. Right?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So jump on, register, addicttoathlete.org. Underneath our events tab, you'll see the races there. And while you're there, you might as well do a double whammy and sign up for our proxy run. It's a recovery run in September. So we'll talk more about that coming up. And I can't really get out without saying this real quick too. I don't know if you noticed last night, Marissa, but I want to give Coach Liz Ashby a little shout out and thanks for letting Addict to Athlete be part of her Girls on the Run organization. We were able to go up there and help set up their little 5K with all those gals running and preparing for their upcoming summer racing season.
Yeah, Girls on the Run is a phenomenal nonprofit organization helping elementary school aged girls get into fitness and exercise. And Liz has been coaching at an elementary school up in Salt Lake, and these girls were so excited to do their first 5K. A few of them have done another season of Girls on the Run, I guess. So they've done a 5K. Some of them were the ones that participated with us in St. George on our Lake to Lake relay. So it was fun to see some of them and their family, and it's just a great organization. So if you ever hear of Girls on the Run, great nonprofit to help.
Absolutely. And Liz is actually raising money right now for their Girls on the Run. There's a link on the Addict Athlete social media outlets and pages, and all the money goes to help those Girls on the Run. She's hoping to get at least 250, but I think we might be able to surpass that. I mean, this organization is amazing. Watching these little gals run, and we'll have a video out soon. But being able to be partnered up with them, just in a little way, to create a very epic race experience for them, setting up our finish line, our sound system, and everything, so these girls could feel the measure of that race that they put in the time to overcome.
Yeah, it was fun.
Amazing. So thanks, Coach Liz. We'll look forward to raising some funds for Girls on the Run. But athletes, let's jump into a little bit of what we've, I guess, come here to discuss, which is we had a question we want to answer. But first, I want to just kind of, again, reiterate the fact that 13 years ago this week, Addict to Athlete lined up for its very first 5K. Those 5 individuals that we've talked about, profoundly throughout the podcast here, kind of kicked off this movement of dealing with addiction more in an upfront manner. Instead of behind curtains and anonymously, we decided to step out into the light and kind of show the world who we are and what we've got. And since that time, I have been amazed at not just the growth, the participation, the volunteerism, the efforts that we've been able to I guess, put forth to create a program of healing, of recovery, of team, of service. It's mind-blowing. This last week, we were able to speak with another like-minded individual, Anna, who runs the Speed Freaks organization, kind of coming out of New Zealand, which was amazing in and of itself. And once that podcast was over, I was telling Marissa how exciting it is to see, again, there we say like the beginnings of something great, meaning like they've been around for a few years now, but I remember year 2 and year 3 with Addict to Athlete and how just beautiful it was because it was taking people off guard.
Yeah.
And the passion that she's putting into these individuals and the volunteers that she's been able to gather, amazing. And so
great organization.
Yeah, it is one of these things where Addict to Athlete is not a unique program. Unique problem. It's a unique problem, but not a unique program. The message within it is, And the cool part about this, we've discovered movement equals healing. It doesn't matter if it's running, walking, hiking, biking, swimming. As long as you're moving, your brain will start taking care of the rest. And we'll get deeper into that specifically in the Patreon episodes. But, this experience was awesome. We had several athletes that we were able to sponsor to go up and participate in the Provo Half Marathon and the Provo City 5K.
Yeah.
And myself, Coach Jensen and Jason Jensen were able to go up to the 13.1 mile starting, and we were pushing our assisted athletes, the Robinson children.
Yes.
I got to push little Abby, and her and I, we're a great team. Her and I.
You guys have run a few times. Huh?
We've raced a few times. It's one of those things where I think if I rewind the tape, Marissa, and I look back at everything Team Addict Athletes done, because we've done a lot, I wanted you to share a little bit about that. I think pushing these kids in these races is among probably the top two things, especially I would say the number one thing we do is being able to be trusted with such precious cargo. When you push an assisted athlete in any event, you've got angel wings behind you.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
And you haven't done this yet. So Freya and Shad, I think it's time we get athletic director Marissa in here.
There's always somebody else in line to push these girls.
Oh, I know Freya, she'd make it a priority. and you don't need to do a half marathon or marathon. We could probably start with a 5K or 10K. The girls will be disappointed because they like to go fast.
And far.
And I think, Emma, who raced with, who Jason pushed, actually did another event that day before out on the salt flats with I think it was with Matt Crandall.
Matt Crandall and his son. Yeah.
And his son. And so, she loves racing.
She had a race weekend.
Yeah. And they crushed that course too, by the way.
Yeah.
But, as we look back and we think of all the things that Addict Athletes done, although Addict Athletes is a nonprofit organization, we are not a charity. There's a lot of charitable things that we do. We were getting a little bit confused on where's the lines between what's a nonprofit that gives away content and, like services and things of that nature versus a charity that gives away items and whatnot. And Addict Athletes been blessed to do quite a bit of both.
Yeah.
As I look at some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, this is a hard thing for me to discuss because we don't Instagram stuff. We don't, have cameras following us around as we're donating things. A lot of times the stuff and the services that we provide are very intimate to the person receiving it. And if they would like to share, that's great. Yeah. But we do get some kickback every now and then because people, who don't understand the differences between a nonprofit and a charity get a little bit up in arms with which is the where's my money going, which you can find on the website. Everything has to be allocated. But I want to take a moment just to share with the listeners a little bit about over the last 13 years, and this is a sliver of what we've done.
Yeah.
But let's share a little bit about what these individuals who were once called addicts have done for their communities.
Yeah, it's been awesome to be able to look back and really account for all the things that we've done. So in the last 13 years, we have been able to utilize 268,000 service hours.
268,000 service hours.
Donated Christmas presents to 886 needy children through our organization, Project Elf, which we do every year and is such an amazing thing to be a part of. 886.
Terry Sawyer, 886. Yeah. Terry Sawyer was one of the social workers that we met early on in the team's inception. And, she kind of put us to the test a little bit. She's like, who are these people? What's going on? Yeah. One of our original athletes, Josh Foster, went over and met with her. We were collecting supplies for kids for school. And she's like,
she works with foster kids.
What is this? And she kickstarted our Project Elf. 883?
886.
86 kids.
Yeah.
Wow. Athletes.
It's awesome. We've been able to give away 1,720 pairs of running shoes.
Thank you, Ultra. Early on in team's inception, again, Ultra Running Shoes, who started about the same time Addict to Athlete did.
Yeah.
Brian Beckstead, Golden Harper, they opened their hearts and arms to Addict to Athlete. We got so many donated shoes back then. And now obviously they have their outlets and stuff. And, there's been times when we've been given discounts and stuff. But back then too.
Yeah.
We
would get boxes.
Boxes and boxes of them.
Awesome shoes.
And, now when athletes need shoes and whatnot, like we were just up at the Ultra store. In fact, I'm sure we don't have our own parking spot up there.
Yeah.
So... That's amazing. New runners. In fact, that's what got Coach Jensen hooked in with us.
That's right.
When the team rallied and bought him a pair of running shoes. That's kind of what he, bases his whole participation on.
It was awesome. So we've been able to donate 1,720 pairs of running shoes. We've been able to sponsor 994 adult and youth in athletic events, races and sports and softball.
And thank you so much, community out there. I mean, the running community in and of itself for accepting Addict Athlete is mind-blowing. You know, watching some of the athletes who started on Team Addict Athlete build relationships outside of the team with the other running groups and stuff is so humbling.
So cool.
City leagues for allowing us to come play.
That's the best part, is having them reach out and start doing other things on their own. In fact, that reminds me when Anna was here from Speed Freaks from New Zealand, she was doing a race, the Backyard Ultra here, and she sent me a picture of one of our athletes up there doing the race
Andrew,
with her.
right?
Yeah, Andrew Baird, one of our Patreon, and I didn't even know he was doing it. I love when our athletes are just on their own, finding, recreation and things to do.
We call them free agents, right?
Yeah, free agents.
Absolutely.
And so she saw him and struck up a conversation with him. She said she wasn't able to see him later, but I love that. So let's see. We've also been able to assist with sober living and treatment funding. We have raised money for 2 adaptive Hoyt racing wheelchairs and 1 bike for disabled athletes. Through the years, we have purchased a headstone for someone who was lost to addiction and family couldn't afford the headstone.
And before you go on, let me talk just briefly about that. That was an amazing experience. We called that the Hope 62. There was one time when we were working in the treatment industry, and it was in group, and we had discovered that one of our group members had a brother who had passed away, and for the longest time had not had a proper marker on his gravesite. And another athlete, she's an athlete now, but another group member said, my brother had same kind of situation, and we got ours, and he has it now. And as I was sitting there thinking about one that was buried in Spanish Fork, Utah, and the other that was buried in Mount Pleasant, Utah. And I don't know why my brain operates this way, but I just jumped on Google Maps or whatnot and calculated that it was 62 miles between the two.
The two cemeteries.
The two cemeteries. Interestingly enough, the combined age by which they both passed away equaled 62. So we called it the Hope 62, and we did a relay style race from, the one group member's brother's site to the next
to raise
money for this headstone. And oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think the athletes that participated in that will never forget that.
No.
It was emotional from the start at that cemetery with the brother with no marker to the finish. Family members from both families came to both the beginning and the end and throughout. And while we continued to run and raise the funds that were needed, that we were able to purchase that headstone. And
during that time too, Marissa, I remember I got word that one of the Fitzgerald boys had passed away. So almost in the middle of that race, we lost one of our friends and teammates there. So that was an amazing. I was nervous about that because when you're sitting in group and you're having these great ideas, it's different. But when you start what's everyone's family's going to think about this? And overwhelmingly supportive. Yeah. It was an amazing thing. So that was an interesting kind of beautiful experience.
Yeah, so that was awesome. We've been able to purchase braces for an athlete who needed it and struggled with some severe TMJ.
Yeah.
Paid rent, covered counseling sessions, bought groceries. We've purchased Thanksgiving dinners. We could go on, but those are just some top things that really stick out that we've been able to help. And we're so grateful that we've had the volunteerism, that we've had the donations from the public, and that we've had the ability to be able to help so many people.
Absolutely.
13 years.
And so it's been a great experience. And again, those are some of the things that just kind of stand out, but there's countless other things. I mean, we've had other athletes that have had things that they've donated to each other, and I think of Beth and her storage unit of clothing. I mean, whenever someone gets on and says, Sundays, I have a job interview or something, and then Beth answers, she's like, okay, meet me here.
Yeah. A shirt and tie or a skirt and shirt.
Yep. The Sundays and the efforts they put in there, especially with the minor league, just beautiful things.
Yeah.
And really overwhelmingly accepted. And a lot of times I remember we were trying to do a Giving Tuesday video on this, and I know that a lot of people like to hear this kind of stuff, and I do too. But like, I don't want to feel like as if it's a boasting thing either.
Yeah.
You know, but I know inquiring minds would like to know. So again, all of our financial records, because we're a 501c3, have to be produced there for you guys to see, and it's all put up there on our website. You know, with the grace of grants that we've been able to receive through the state of Utah that will be ending next year, we've actually been able to pay for employment. So like with Marissa and I being able to come on, I'm very much part-time here. I have to continue the old private counseling, which is doing quite well. But, you know, being able to pay some of our coaches out there for the time that they serve, because when you start looking at those service hours rendered, that is absolutely incredible. I've said it since day one, Team Addict Athlete wouldn't exist if it was just me. It wouldn't be able to function. It's everyone out there.
Our coaches and team captains put in a lot of time. I was just messaging one of the captains down in St. George yesterday who was in charge of the service projects for that Washington County chapter. And he puts in a lot of time and effort looking for ways that he can find for their team to give back. And one of them was over the weekend, which was phenomenal.
Man.
Our St. George chapter volunteered all day. I'm guessing, I don't know the total hours, but I think it was like 12 hours, probably start to finish, doing an aid station for the St. George Half Ironman, which is a phenomenal event. It's humongous and it takes a lot of work and in the hot sun for a long time. And they have athletes out there. They have kids, grandkids of the athletes out helping hand out water and goo, and they're just phenomenal. And we're so grateful for all of them.
Yeah, you know, that kind of service too is amazing, because when you get someone that's been on the other side of the law and an addiction, and it doesn't seem like anyone appreciates anything that you do, say, or participate in, to flip the script and become a very intricate person in an athlete's success by hosting an aid station is a huge deal. And, you know, I mean, in a couple of weeks, we'll be hiking up to Indian Springs to do an aid station. I think of all the time we spend volunteering for John Bozon and the Squaw Peak 50. You know, I mean, there's so much that goes into this, you know, and we've had to donate extra supplies for some of these races too, that you know, we just, you know we want these athletes to, you know, finish. If you're out of water, you're out of you know, vinegar, salt, potatoes, you go make them.
Well, and I mean, Brooke Hutchings, the Hutchings family, they've donated and so much time to aid stations that they know that what they're given at aid stations isn't what all the athletes really want or need. So they get Otter Pops and they freeze them beforehand and keep them cold. And I mean, just lots of extra things, making pancakes. And I mean, they just go above and beyond, and we're so grateful for all of them.
Yeah. Well, and something even special that was kind of neat this last weekend, you know, one of our athletes, Jeff Smith, you know, popping his head back in here, and as he was moving some stuff around, found one of his old wristbands that we made, years ago for one of our relay races. And Cheryl Allred, one of our athletes, you know, saw that, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I made a bunch of those," and she had donated them to the team. And so she actually made one for everyone that ran this last race.
So she just reminded her of that. And so she found some paracord and she made some more wristbands for everyone that did our annual race with Provo City, which was awesome.
So Coach Jensen handed those out to all the athletes. So it's those kind of small things too that if we don't know, we don't count, but it happens every day. But, you know, enough of that. I just wanted to give everyone out there a thanks for all of our coaches out there who, you know, tirelessly put in the energy. You know, I think of, you know, Coach Jonah and Flo out there in, you know, Uinta Basin, and Tara down there, you know, Coach Tara down in Southern Arizona. I mean, geez, there's so much. And then, you know, again, Coach Dustin, who's starting Team Addict Athlete in Texas. Yep. His mother just passed away and he's got lots on his plate. And I'm like, dude, take the time that you need. And he's like, Blue, it's go time. Like, these are things that happen. So again, thanks isn't enough. I mean, it really isn't. But I hope that as we move forward, I'd love to hear from everyone out there about how it's affected them, what they've done with the shoes, you know, where those shoes have taken them, you know, those kind of things I think would be great to hear from. And it's always awesome when we hear from our very old athletes that pop in to meet all the very new athletes, because our new athletes don't stay new very long. They jump in and they become seasoned professionals. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for 13 years and counting of Team Addict to Athlete. Like it's mind blowing, really. So jumping into our question today, Marissa, we'll spend the last part of this kind of answering, this question. And it kind of resonated with me. This has come from one of my clients that was kind of talking a little bit about feeling like he's been overlooked and left out when it comes to the family dynamic. It's impacting kind of his I guess, sense of self and his sense of belonging and connectiveness. It kind of got me thinking a little bit about some of the similar things that happen to me when you get sober. Yeah. And you've heard me say this quite a bit. When people go into a treatment program and they get clean, the family wants that. They want their family member to stop, the addiction and stop the struggle. But they don't quite anticipate the amount of change that really occurs when it's taken seriously, when you go somewhere and you authentically do the work. Because not only do you cease to be a substance user, you also start having these experiences of processing trauma, of letting stuff go, of understanding some significance of who you are, some self-worth. Dare we say that you make a complete change. And then when you go home, you go back to your environment, everyone else is fairly the same, but you've changed. Yeah. And sometimes that's a little bit hard to grasp, right? Like, so we can't have wine now with our dinner because, Blue or whoever's coming over it's a barbecue. So of course there's going to be a cooler full of beer and everybody's going to be drinking and, and it's not saying that's the only thing, but it's also things like when you start kicking back feedback, you see something, you're like, well, it sounds, mom or dad, it seems like you guys need to be accountable for your side of this. I'm like, well, who do you think you are? Like,
now you're telling us what to do?
Exactly. And it can become a little bit of a stress. And a lot of time what happens is alienation.
After so much time of having there's certain ways that we sadly act with friends and family, mostly after years and years. There's certain responses that just come quick and natural. And so when you change something and only one of you changes and the other ones don't. And not that we're saying that the family members are wrong or bad, but it's just difficult. In
fact, don't know.
I was talking to one of the moms at our birthday party on Saturday, whose daughter is now, I think she's been struggling with addiction like strong for 10 years or something. And she's been in and out of a couple rehabs and she's doing really well. And the mom's like, I have been shocked with how much I really like her. She said there were so many years where she was just such a bear to be around because she would just react and snap. And even when I looked at getting her into one of these rehabs, I was like, she's going to get kicked out, like, because she's so mean. And she's like, she really is a pleasant person when she's clean and sober and I can like just interact with her. But they've had 10 years of just like, like this prickly pear, and they're just like protecting themselves every day that they don't know even how to respond to her, because now it's like, oh, she's going to jump down my throat. Oh, she's going to yell at me. And she's like, she's not. I really like her.
So funny.
It's
love it.
It's difficult.
I love it. Well, and it did open up a little bit of a remembrance door in my heart, because I remember when I finally let go of everything and I started to make significant changes, specifically in the world of like, spirituality and things of that nature. It really put a dividing wedge in my family system, and kind of almost had to choose which one it would be, on this path of becoming a little bit more enlightened for myself and kind of aligning myself with principles and values that seemed, like
you found important. Yeah,
very important. The distancing became even more and more, I think, obvious. And I'll never forget the time that we were driving around, and somehow we'd figured out that my stepfather had just gotten remarried. And it's a long story, trust me. But I was really connected with him. And, I took his last name with me. And so when I'm kind of exploring who I am, I'm Blue Robinson. And so to find out that the person that I kind of aligned myself with, this father figure, didn't even consider inviting me to to this marriage, which again, the marriage was with someone who was also very significant in my life. And it was a really hard thing to find out through other family members, like, why weren't you there? And I'm like, well, no one even
didn't know they were getting married.
No one even did that. So it got me thinking, like, seriously, as I'm starting my own family here, like Blue Robinson, now doesn't feel like Robinson's connected to anyone. I mean, Blue, Thompson, my biological given name, that certainly didn't have any connection to anyone.
Any ties to that?
No one. And so I'm like, well, that's interesting. So as an adult, as I'm like, okay, you know what? I choose in only to have, again, I should have read the tea leaves, to have it end in divorce. Like, I remember telling Marissa, I'm like, we have no background.
Yeah.
Like,
you were really sad. Like, I took this name and now I feel like I'm not tied to that either. And like, even apologizing to me for that. And I was like, it's fine. Guess what? Like, we are the new generation of Robinson, and that's our name to create with it as we will, instead of always looking back. And that's okay.
And so, I get how that feels about that. I mean, taking my kids down to see my mother years ago when I got the news that she might be sick and passing away, which happened at that time not to be the case, to feel like, all right, I've got to go down and at least make some amends and some forgiveness journeys here, and to go down there and to see on her walls, when we went to her place in Arizona, that had pictures of everybody's families except for mine.
All of, your siblings and her new husband's family. And then
I'm like, wow. Others. Yeah, my kids noticed. And I remember telling you that, and you're like, I know we've sent them things, But it was just kind of a visual representation of kind of how it felt. And so the first thing I remember doing was being able to communicate openly with you and with the people that would listen. Kind of like seek some understanding by discussing the reasons behind the dynamics of it all, right?
Well, like, and in even that open communication, it's being able to identify, like, do I care enough about this relationship that I want to have this open communication with them and let them know how bad I feel, let them know I'm feeling left out? Or is this something I don't care enough, that relationship may not be worth investing that much more in, and I need to just openly communicate with my family now, the people who support and around me now, about how painful and heart-wrenching that can be. You have to be able to decide, what is most important.
It's a crazy feeling, because as he's expressing this to me, I'm like, I know exactly how you feel, but what worked for me may not work for them, right? Yeah. I mean, I've talked about this too. When my mother passed away a couple of years ago, there was, it's so hard to even say this publicly, but there wasn't a lot of sadness. And as I've come to understand, the reason why there wasn't sadness is because that relationship had already been grieved. Right?
You had grieved for years about losing that connection with your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard for me, because I'm thinking, that's a commandment, like honor your mother and father. But I'm like, I don't feel like there's that mother-son relationship. Doesn't mean I don't love her, doesn't mean that I don't understand, but it was like, I've already done that.
Yeah.
And so setting boundaries, if necessary, to protect your emotional well-being and kind of ensure that you're, okay, is crucial. Yeah. I learned that it wasn't worth investing because there'd be nothing on return, right? Yeah. Again, we talk about this with the box theory. It's like sitting down at a gambling machine, like at a slot machine, and putting in $100 of your emotional currency. And every time you pull the handle, nothing comes out. Right?
Yeah.
You can put thousands and thousands of dollars into this, one at a time, thinking that it's going to pay out, but it never does.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if I want to be entertained and I don't mind the bells and the whistles and all the lights, then I'll invest.
But that's got to be something you have to come to terms with. Like, how long? Oftentimes people do that and they invest and invest and invest, and nothing's coming back. And all that does is build resentment and anger and sadness and, feeling overlooked. Is that worth it? You have to be able to assess and say, do I want to continue to invest in something that is not giving back? And if I let go, am I okay? Do I feel good enough to just move on?
Right.
And you had to do that. In fact, you had to do it a few different times when you were like, felt bad about things, like you'd hear about family members getting together and them not calling you, and you'd say, maybe it's not worth it. That really hurts. Or no, I know what's going to happen anyway, and I don't care to be there. Yeah. And that's okay too. But being able to like assess that within yourself is really important.
Well, it's a big deal. And then, when she did pass away and we were able to visit with my siblings, right? My brother and my sister, it was interesting to see that I wasn't the only one that felt that way. which was a little bit of a deep breath, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the only reason they did is because they made the effort knowing that there would be nothing in return.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my oldest sister, she put a lot into her, a lot. And she's a saint for doing so.
Sacrificed and just gave. Yeah. Served. Yeah.
It wasn't emotionally safe. And so I couldn't. I've tried.
Yeah.
On the flip side, it got me to the impression, and people when they hear this, they take it one or two ways. Either they're like, yeah, I get it. Or it's like, well, you're conceited as all get out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the understanding that it's a privilege to have a relationship with us. It's a privilege to have a relationship with me. It's not a right.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody violates that, they don't have the right to hang. I'm sorry. And that's a blessing and a curse with me.
Yeah, you have to be okay with saying that because many people will look at you and be angry and think that you're just thinking you're better than them. And like you said, that your sister invested so much in your mom, even knowing it wasn't going to pay back. And you were like, I can't. And how do you also keep that relationship with your sister that she's not upset or resentful of you, that you didn't put in effort where you should have, and that she respects the boundary you set because that's what you needed. Like that takes some communication and some,
absolutely.
It's difficult for sure.
It's hard. And so when people hear that, they think, when people say, blood is thicker than water, it's like, you got to say the rest of that quote, because it talks about the water of the womb and whatnot, right? Because guess what? If you're not producing the outcome that way, like, and I get this a lot, I mean, I have a biological father out there that I don't know if he's alive or gone, but I feel zero compulsion to find him because he's done nothing on the other end. You know what I'm saying? And I have what I need. Remember when I met him again in 2006, was it?
Something like
that, 2003?
After a long time, yeah.
I told him, I don't need you, but if you want a relationship with me, here's my number. Ball's in your court, Chief. Never came. And so, I've talked with some athletes and stuff that's like, yeah, but Blue, but isn't it, your responsibility? I'm like, no, it's not. And so the sad thing.
And part of that is because you've decided that you don't need that, and that's okay. And that you're okay with that. Like if you were holding on to that with grievance and resentment and anger, so that if your dad ever does call and reach out to you, that you can just yell and scream, then there's a problem there.
Right.
But if you're like, I don't need him, I don't want him, if he doesn't want to make the effort, then I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with it.
That's where it has to be such an individualized decision on where your boundary is and what you're willing to sacrifice or give up or take, and be okay with the consequences of that either way.
Absolutely. And so there's a Buddhist philosophy that I absolutely love, and it, is spoken like, it is your resistance to what is that's causing your suffering. And so I look at that a lot with things that I'm feeling are overwhelming or that I feel like there's been some kind of suffering as a result of. And if I'm resisting it, either I've got to lean into it or I've got to be okay with letting it go. And that's kind of a, the old Frozen song, Let It Go. There's a lot of wisdom in that. But how do you actually do it? By walking away and holding zero animosity, no anger, but being like, I understand. And so I learned with Marissa's help that it's okay to not invest in people that constantly hurt. I remember we've talked about this in the podcast before, that very first time when you and I were dating in the car and my mother called me. Yeah. And you said, don't answer it. We're talking. And I'm like, I have to answer this. And you're like, don't answer it. We're talking right now. And she needs to respect that. And I'm like, what if she's, in a car crash, or what if this, or, she'd kind of taught me to be codependent. And when I'm like, watch, and it never went to voicemail, that was an eye opener for me. That was a big eye opener for me, that no matter what, and even if I have to be at her beck and call, man, that was big. Yeah. So the resistance to what is causing my suffering, then my resistance to try and gain her approval, gain her love, gain her respect, gain her view, was going nowhere. So I had to stop. I had to stop doing that and be okay with saying, I'm here when you're ready. And that came after that letter that I wrote because she had, tried to put us in a situation for a phone bill that wasn't ours and whatnot. And she said, I never want to talk to you again. I said, be careful because I'll respect that. I'd already let it go.
Yeah.
And 7 years, nothing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy. I'll be honest with you. It wasn't easy. I mean, there was sadness, and we've talked about this with birthdays and stuff. The person, that you think was going to call you and say, hey, great job, never does.
Yeah. And there's going to be emotions tied to stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Feeling hurt.
Certainly.
And then you have to reassess. Do I want to reach out? Do I want to do something? Or no, it's not worth it. I'm not okay.
It's not worth my time. Which, unfortunately for them, missed out on a lot of amazing things that happened in mine and my family's life. Even now, do I hold any animosity? No, I don't, because I look at it as I feel sad for them that they didn't get to see, what it is. And I understand my mom ran from that kind of stuff. My mom didn't understand what real love looked like. I don't think she could process it or handle it. And that's a pretty sad thing. I know enough about my spiritual side to understand that she knows how I feel now, and I'm okay with that, and on the other side, when things get reunited, I'm pretty sure that there'll be a lot of thank yous and I've learned and all kinds of stuff. Even from my side, I could be seeing things completely wrong too. So you never know.
Never know. Yeah.
But the more communication you can have and the more investment you can give to the people around you, and this individual that's speaking does have a similar situation with a spouse and with his own family, lean into them.
Yeah.
Lean into them and watch what happens, because that's what I did. And we have an amazing family that I'm super proud of. They're not perfect. They struggle. They do dumb things. But so do we as parents. So it's kind of like we grow and heal together. None of us grow old together. We heal together. Yeah. So and so I know what that feels like. Open communication, seek some understanding, set some boundaries, and keep working through it in therapy.
Find people.
Develop strategies to improve it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What are some coping skills you can do? Because the emotions are still going to come up, and you have to work through them as you need.
100%. Sure. So athletes, there's the overtime for you this week. Again, thank you for all the volunteers. 13 years of service going on to 14 years now.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Starting year 14, I guess.
Absolutely. And continue to jump in with our questions. We'd love to answer them. If we don't get them on the air, we'll get them off the air. Nonetheless, this is your show, so thanks for being a part of it. This will be pushed out as a podcast this Friday, and I would love to be able to answer any of the questions that you guys have. Jump on addicttoathlete.org, blue@addicttoathlete.org. But if you really want a response, Marissa at addicttoathlete.org. And we'd love to see you on our upcoming team half marathon in June. Register today. Do your best to sign up a team that's going to be able to support you and turn your mess into your message.